Let's talk about the tariffs because it was a campaign promise, and I know you've been tweeting a little bit about this. So talk to us about these tariffs from your point of view.
I'm for one thing, this idea that the entire economy is going to collapse, no one will trade with us, there will be retaliatory tariffs. The U.S. has the most enormous deficit in the world. I think our deficit is equal to all other countries' deficits combined, something crazy like that. China is eating our lunch. So if you may know nothing and have no interest in the topic, but if you're in a relationship and one person is kicking your butt, you take some slight advantage. That person isn't going to say, oh, okay, let's call the game off. It's like you're in the ninth inning and it's 20-0. It starts to rain. Does the team that has 20, do they say, okay, let's call it for rain? So that's what we're looking at.
Right.
For one thing, and the second point I'd make is just look at the absolute raging hysteria. It was actually, I only saw a little bit of TV this weekend, but wow, these Cato libertarian types are absolutely hysterical. Free trade has just become a religion. And you know, it's Trump's promise to put America first on immigration and on trade, and then I think the two are quite linked. We have borders. We're a sovereign nation. We take care of our own. I loved Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross's point, holding up the Campbell soup can because it was so memorable, and I think so many people saw it. But he said this idea that, prices are going to go through the roof if we have to pay more for steel because steel goes into so many components here, there. And he said, I went into a 7-Eleven. Here's a soup can. It cost $1.99. The amount of steel in this can was 3 cents. You get the same thing generally with the immigration arguments with, I'm sorry, a lot of California farmers insisting on getting their cheap labor. When you look into, what even, an apple costs, much less things like bread, the amount of the labor cost in that is such a tiny percentage of it. So no, I mean we have to take care of our fellow Americans first, and we have been having our lunch eaten. So I'm glad Trump is finally fulfilling this promise.
Well, the neat thing is, and again, Ann Coulter with us on KSFO, AnnCoulter.com is the website. And I mean, for years in our conversations with you, you've always been about America first, and you've said, wouldn't it be nice to have a president who looks at all things through that lens? Well, we finally got that guy.
Yes, and it's totally shaking up the political establishment. I mean, I've been a lifelong Republican. I know a lot about my ancestors, and going back to the beginning of the Republican Party, there isn't a Democrat in the family tree, and suddenly Trump comes along, and I realize, oh my gosh, I hate my party. I mean, I always thought that they, and I'm sure there are some, certainly the base, certainly Republican voters,
Right.
Agree with Trump's positions on a lot of these things, but I just think Washington, I mean, one of the great innovations of Trump is this idea of the swamp. There really is such a thing.
Yes.
And elected Republicans seem to have not the best interests of Americans in mind, but the best interests of donors in mind. Either that or they're just stupid, and I find that hard to believe.
Ann Coulter with us.
Cases.
Ann's going to be in the Bay Area next week. We're going to talk about that in just a moment to come into the Silicon Valley. And you had a column you wrote last week. It's entitled "The School to Mass Murder Pipeline." It's a great piece. Could you just summarize it for our listeners really quick?
Yes, whenever you hear about the school to prison pipeline or restorative justice or the Promise program, I just want all of you to immediately think of Nicholas Cruz in Florida. The reason he was the school shooter, the reason he was, although committing felonies right and left, and obviously crazier than a bedbug. The reason he was wandering free and able to accumulate this arsenal was that an agreement was signed with, of course, the famous Sheriff Israel, the school, the sheriff's office, a judge, all these special interest activists, the NAACP and Public Defender's Office, where they would not report the crimes of students because of this crackpot idea developed in the ed schools. They looked at the data and saw that kids who are disciplined a lot in school and kids who get arrested and expelled and suspended, they're much less likely to go to college and get good jobs. So the conclusion is, it's this primitive logic of the cargo cult. Their logic is, as long as no one keeps a record of their crimes, they'll go on to MIT and cure cancer and design spaceships. That literally is the logic of it. So there was an agreement among all of the leaders in Broward County. Broward County really led the way, even before Obama's Department of Justice. Their idea is just don't write it down. Don't keep a record of it. So they kept moving this kid around. He was forcibly transferred schools 6 times in 3 years, but they kept bringing him back to this high school where his fellow students were reporting to the school safety officer, to the head of JROTC, showing them text messages of Nicholas Cruz texting them and threatening to kill him along with pictures of their guns. We have the names of at least 3 students who did this, and the text messages that you can read that he was sending. They were released to BuzzFeed. It's astonishing. It just goes on and on and on with him cursing and threatening. He had pulled a gun on his mother. He'd throw chairs. He'd curse out teachers. He'd try to kick down doors. He cut himself. He drank gasoline. But the felonies alone, 1 felony, that means you're convicted of a felony, can't get a gun, can't possess a gun. And we have multiple felonies here, but because the school and Sheriff Israel, despite the students warning them over and over again, full paper trail, they refused to do anything about it. That is why Nicholas Cruz was free and out and about. Now, most of the time, this nonsense about the school to prison pipeline, don't worry, as long as we don't write it down, it doesn't. You will have no consequences for bad behavior. Usually, the consequences are obviously of a much lower order. It just ruins the education of all the other kids, and especially when there are a lot of bad behaving students in class. They can't learn, they get beaten up every day, but every once in a while something like this is going to happen.
This is an insightful article. I highly advise you to go to AnnCoulter.com to read this. She's talking about stuff that no one else in the media is talking about. She's going to be in the Bay Area Tuesday at the Conservative Forum, online, theconservativeforum.com. So, Ann, this is going to be great. It's going to be Tuesday, and it's going to be wonderful for our listeners to be able to meet you and hear you.
I know. I can't wait. And by the way, they asked me, and I spent a while trying to figure it out. I can't remember what book I was promoting. When was the last time I gave a speech in the Bay Area? It was with you. It was at the end of a book tour, and I can't remember which book it was. It was at least 3 books back, though, I think.
Yes,
do you have any idea?
It was, well, that's the problem. When you're a prolific author, we can't keep track. I mean, you have, but the book that they're promoting for this one is In Trump We Trust. That's the book that they're promoting for this event.
Yes, and by the way, you can also follow me on Twitter at Ann Coulter.
And we do. Ann, always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you next week, and thanks for spending a little time with us this morning.
Great to talk to you again, Brian.
All right, and there she goes on KSFO. Again, this is going to be the Liberty Forum of Silicon Valley. Doors will open at 6:15. Programs begin at 7. Now, from what I'm told, this sucker sold out. But my guess is if I know these guys, they're going to find a way to make accommodations for more people to go see Ann. So just go to theconservativeforum.com. That's their website, theconservativeforum.com. Ann Coulter in the Bay Area, Tuesday, March 13th. And you heard her right here on KSFO.
We will make America great again.